Here we go. Let's try this again. Everybody ready to go? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. What's up, guys? What's up, guys? Welcome to Moonrunner City. I'm Chris. Here we go. Today's video, we're going to talk about The Running Man. So, The Running Man is being remade. 1987's Arnold Schwarzenegger cult classic is going to be remade. Edgar Wright is directing. Glen Powell is going to be starring, and it's going to be coming out in November 7th. So this is going to be a Paramount picture. The original Running Man was a Columbia picture, written by Steven D'Souza and directed by. Ooh, I'm blanking on who it was directed by. Let's check real fast. Directed by Paul Michael Glazer, right? So Steven E. D'Souza was the writer. He also wrote a bunch of other classics like Die Hard, I believe, and also some stinkers like um, Commando and Street Fighter with Dolph Lundgren. He wrote 48 Hours. He wrote Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, one of the ones with Angelina Jolie. So he's been around. That's Stephen A. D'Souza. He adapted The Running Man from a Stephen King short story called The Running Man, and Stephen King at the time didn't even really have his name attached to the title. So let's see here. So the original Stephen King short story was, he had a pen name which was Richard Bachman. So Richard Bachman was Stephen King's pen name, basically his like ghostwriter name. So if he didn't put a book under his name, he would release it under this other like pseudonym. Now there's some debate on whether or not he didn't put his actual name on this short story because of the movie and the direction that the movie took, and he was like kind of like ashamed of it, and so he didn't want his name on the project or just like associated with the book and the movie at all. But there's also reports that Richard Bachman was just a pseudonym pen name that Stephen King actually just used just to put extra stories out there. So when Stephen King back in the day, as he's a hired writer, he's only basically, maybe let's say he's under contract to put out a certain amount of books a year. The publishers don't want him to keep putting out books, so that they want his other books to sell. So he's only able to put out a certain amount of books a year. But the guy's got so many stories rattling around. What a lot of some story writers would do is they would just kind of write stories under a different name, under a different publisher, and they would be able to get their stories out that way. So this was just another way to get like some just more of those crazy stories that this man had in his head, which is incredible because you think about all the actual novels that he's put together, and then on top of that, the short stories. So this guy just had stories just for days in his head. So this is one of them, The Running Man, and his short story is very different from Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie, in that Arnold Schwarzenegger basically is forced into the game, the Running Man game. So just to set the scene here, the Running Man, if you guys don't know, is set in like a dystopian future where the economy's fucked, and we're under like everybody's living under like a police totalitarian state, and the media is run by the state also, and is basically like this big propaganda and serving to like just basically people occupied and just under the control of the totalitarian government. So that's the world that these characters are living in. And in Stephen King's book, well, sorry, I'll stay with the movie. So in Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Running Man, he is basically, he's a soldier or a policeman, and he's like framed, or he's given the order to like shoot upon a group of like civilians. Okay, so a bunch of people are rioting because they want like food, and because they're starving. People are hungry, they're poor, so they're rioting and they're trying to get a food from a food truck. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is a soldier or police, and he's ordered to fire upon them, and he denies the order. And I believe they just fire upon them anyway, and they kind of blame him for what happens. And so he's sent to prison, and he's sent to prison, and then in the movie he actually escapes prison, but then gets recaptured and then gets thrown into the one of these games. And the game is the Running Man game, which is where they take basically one of these contestants and they set him loose in like this little quasi area of in Arnold Schwarzenegger's story, in like this little quadrant of Los Angeles, a futuristic version of Los Angeles. And he's like kind of just set loose there, and he has to survive and battle just an array of assassins that are sent out to kill him, just like these really theatrical assassins, like an American Gladiator style assassins, with like big names and personalities. So Arnold Schwarzenegger basically is set loose and has to defeat all the other bad guys, basically like a gladiator, and that's basically the premise of the movie. So in Stephen King's novel or short story, it's a little different, a lot darker. The Arnold Schwarzenegger version is very camp. It's very action 80s action oriented. It has a bit of a cyberpunk feel to it, but more campy. And I think that's from just Richard Dawson's performance and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jesse the Body Ventura's in it, and just like I think the actors brought a more campier feeling to the story than I think was originally intended, which I think works for the movie and for that time. But the Stephen King short story was way more darker and way more grim, and dealt with way more like darker themes and had way more like serious tone to it. So in the Stephen King short story, let me just get something to drink here. So in the Stephen King book, the character Richard, he volunteers for the games. So it's basically the same future where the economy is basically fucked, and our characters are desperate. His girlfriend has a sick baby. Sick baby is sick and needs medical care, and they need money, and they are desperate. And so Richard volunteers for the Running Man game. And so at the end, if the contestant wins, he's able to win some prize money. Or I think throughout the game, he's able to just stack up a certain amount of money, just so that his family gets some money. Even if he loses, if he gets farther enough, they might get some as much cash as he could muster. So he volunteers for the game, and in this Stephen King novel, it's said that there's multiple um, games that are shown throughout this like TV system that the citizens of the state basically have to watch, and so they have to watch said games or TV and keep it on for some reason. I forget. I haven't read the book, so I'm sorry. I'll read it. We'll dive into this. We're going to go down the rabbit hole, and I'll read the book, and we'll watch the original Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and all that stuff leading up to Glen Powell's The Running Man. So basically, yeah, the Richard is unleashed into the games, and then yeah, at the end of the story is also kind of dark and grim compared to Arnold Schwarzenegger's version. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, like I said, Arnold Schwarzenegger's version is a lot more, a little bit more. Like I said, they tried to go in the version of like a cyberpunk, but it turned out to be more of like a kind of sci-fi action camp. Because this is just all like so much just quippy, uh, like dialogue and just snarky remarks and one-liners from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like this is just a Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liner, just enjoyment like fest. Like you can't get if you just love Arnold Schwarzenegger dropping one-liners, this is your movie. This is a movie that I didn't really find very interesting when I was growing up, or like even as an adult. I never really was into the Running Man. I always liked some of his other action movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger of this time, and so the Running Man was one of those that just kind of gets put to the side. And I think in just for the general audience, the Running Man is kind of just like the dark sheep of that early era of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's definitely at this point in his career, he's not as big as you would think just yet. He did Conan and the Terminator, and he's pretty big, but he's starting to do some action movies that aren't really hitting yet. And this year is like his big breakout year where he does the Running Man, and then later on down the road, the Predator comes out. Predator comes out, and then we all know the story from there. Then we get Total Recall and Terminator 2, and the rest is history. So we got Glen Powell, who's about to blow up. This guy's just been kind of following the framework of how to be a movie star and a leading man and just, yeah, real action hero, superstar, guy that could like lead a studio franchise. We'll see. But this is like kind of like on that step that he's taking. He was in like an ensemble summer blockbuster like Top Gun. He was like a leading man in Twisters, which I really like. That one is seems to be more. That one's really not his movie. Um, but nevertheless, his name is on the poster. He's like the second lead in that movie, and the movie's pretty good. And I think the movie also did pretty well in for the box office. So now he's got The Running Man for Paramount, and it's a remake, and it's a big action extravaganza with Edgar Wright directing. And so before we get into it, I just wanted to take a look at The Running Man, the original trailer, and just so that we could get just a taste of what this was like. Right away, we get the voice, right? The trailer voice. We're gonna find out the guy's name. Arnold Schwarzenegger with a beard. You gotta love that. Richard Dawson. You can see the sets just were a little like on the cheap side, and the costumes. It's not as polished as something that like Ridley Scott would give you. Yeah, the characters, the bad guy characters, really campy and really like Dynamo. It was just rough, just like a guy with like light bulbs all over him. And then some of the set pieces are just a little corny. The hockey scene, and it's 4th of July, so happy 4th of July. So if you might hear fireworks in the background, or just maybe gunfire, because I am in Pennsylvania, and it's summertime. So that's The Running Man, right? 1987. Now, let's get into Glen Powell's Running Man. And we get the obligatory annoying trailer before the trailer. And I'm going to keep saying how dumb this is until YouTube or the studios figure out that this is just a dumb way to intro your trailer.
Employment status blacklisted, but there's still a way out for you. It's the biggest show in the country. It's our birthright. Welcome to the Running Man. People on these games never come back. I'm not trying to get myself killed.
So right now we could already see that the trailer looks like this version of the Running Man is gonna kind of follow the short story a little closer. It looks like he's could be volunteering because of, like I said, his girlfriend and child problems. The Arnold Schwarzenegger version, he doesn't have like a family back home. I don't believe. No, I don't. I'm not sure. Like I said, I didn't see. There's bits and pieces of that one I seen.
Such as last twice. Right there is why you can win this game. The rules are simple. Survive.
So right away you can see that this follows Edgar Wright's humor and style of his humor and ultra violent and looks like it's edited very well. Like snappy editing. Which is good. I think that's what this movie needs, is not just to look good, but just also have a tone and vision in the editing and in the music and just everything overall. So yeah, we could already see that. I mean, it's gonna look great. This looks like a scene that follows what a story like what follows a storyline in the book. And Freevee is like the studio or the TV system that they have to watch. So it looks like a lot of fun, right? A lot of action, a lot of theatrics, a lot of spectacle. Real like rough around the edges kind of humor. We're not afraid to like electrocute people and make a joke out of it, so that's fun. So yeah, right now I think it's fun. Looks great. Looks like from the looks of it. Okay, you could stop. Let's stop there. Looks great. Like the cinematics of it. Like I said, the editing. We know the editing is probably going to be good. Edgar Wright did Baby Driver, and Last Night in Soho. He's done the Cornetta series, which is Shaun of the Dead. Man, let's see if we get this. Here we go. Edgar Wright. We're gonna get his Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz. Man, I want to. What's the next one? Hold up, guys. Sorry. So Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End. So those are like the Cornetto like trilogy. a group of films that he like. Those are his first like little stint of films, and then he does Ant-Man and Baby Driver, and that's like his studio breakout films. So then he does Last Night in Soho, and then now he's doing Running Man. So it's got this guy's, he's a good director. He's got some experience. He's got studio experience. He got experience with big movies. So this is definitely something that he could handle. This is definitely something that he could put like his own like little spin on and his own style and flavor on, which I think this movie needs. One of the things that I think a lot of people are worried about with this movie, and a lot of the things that you've probably been hearing already on the internet, and when people react to this trailer, is that it it looks like a lot of fun, but it just doesn't look like it's going to be very smart or have a lot of heart. More importantly, and the original Running Man and its story, I think the reason why that movie is like just like kind of like a B hit and kind of a cult classic is because in concept and the story is just a little bit more interesting, and you could kind of like sink your teeth into that more than the actual what actually happens in the Arnold Schwarzenegger version. The actual all the other stuff that happens is just kind of like fun and just cool and just able to keep your attention while the film kind of like sets up this interesting like premise for you to like think about for a little while. Um, which is just what if you're the ideas of media and a controlled state by the police and media controlled by the government and just all those things like that we've seen in other movies, and those kind of ideas and themes are really interesting. One of the more recent things that where we've seen something like that is like in the Hunger Games movies. The first Hunger Games really did a good job of that. Sorry. Just making a spectacle of like this crazy like gladiatorial type of event where people are gonna like hurt each other or they're fighting to the death. There's a movie called Battle Royale that does that really well also. So these are themes and ideas that can be really explored in a very interesting way. And the Running Man was cool, and I think found an audience because it had like this interesting premise, and then delivered with like cool action and cool Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liners, and Richard Dawson's performance is really good. And I think the direction and just like I said, the cyberpunk and campiness of it is just kind of very interesting and of its time, and it's a bit unique also, and it goes the distance. Like I said, the light bulb dynamo is pretty bad. Um, the whole movie itself it's not great cinema, but like I said, it is a cult classic. It has its fans, and it's a remake that makes sense because it's something that you could see like, oh yeah, they could take that and dive into that and make that a little bit better with special effects and give it like a studio polish and just take this B movie classic and turn it into like a Hollywood, juggernaut. And so you would think that works, but it doesn't. Hollywood doesn't really pull that off a lot. Some of the like some recent examples would be like Death Race, just Jason Statham's Death Race. That's a remake of like kind of a cult classic, and then the Jason Statham now is almost in itself kind of like a campy cult classic. Sorry, I just had to adjust there. The Time Machine, Richard Donner's The Time Machine, starring Guy Pearce, is another one that was like a remake that you would think would get remade with today's, special effects and production design. You think something like that. You take something, I forget when the original Time Machine was made, but maybe the 50s or the 60s. like that would look great. Same thing with the day the Earth stood still with Keanu Reeves. That's another like remake of a 50s sci-fi classic that when upgraded to like with today's technology, and you think it could deliver, but it really falls short. And really, mostly the real reason is because I think a lot of these remakes don't really follow the brains of what makes these stories popular and interesting, and they miss the heart of what these original movies like got right. The core of these movies wasn't just the premise. There was like something else about it. So like with the Running Man, it was definitely Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it was definitely the campiness and the kind of tongue in cheekness of it, and Richard Dawson and him being like a real actual host in real life, and now he's being like this evil host on in this movie, which was he was also like that media part of it was a really interesting aspect of that movie. And so yeah, like those things were parts of that movie that made that story interesting and strike with an audience. So I think a lot of times when they make these remakes, they kind of just run with the premise and try to deliver with like action scenes and special effects, but really miss the whole point. Sometimes, like with Total Recall, the 2012 remake with Colin Farrell, I think misses the point of the original Total Recall. I think the remake of Assault on Precinct 13 kind of misses the mark a little bit. Mm. And there's some other ones that are a little bit that are not as bad. There's some ones that I think are needed and that come out and turn out to be really well done. I'm a fan of Man on Fire. I think that's a really good remake of an older like cult classic that wasn't like a big hit, but when remade today, ends up being like a really good hit, a really good movie. I think we're okay. Okay. All right. I think we're okay. So yeah, from there, I think we'll check in on this again when we see some new images or new trailers or any new news on the Running Man. We're gonna cover this until it comes out, and maybe we'll cover some other stuff about the original Stephen King short story. And let me know on the comments what else you guys want to see. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Be good. Bye, guys.